Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Family Protection Association and Survival Life podcast. Today, we've got a fantastic guest with us that we're very, very honored to have. We've got Zachary Fowler, the winner of History Channel's Alone Season 3, Patagonia. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel. We definitely want to encourage everybody to check out as well. And we'll talk more about that. Zach, it's great having you on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So right now you're out on a trip. Actually, you are kind of in
I'm in the
COVID
south.
quarantine.
Look at how sweaty I am.
Oh, it's brutal.
I'm trying to get in. I was like enjoying the outdoors because there's like a half an hour or more light here, so I enjoyed it for a little bit. And it's a little cooler as the day goes on, but holy cow, it's still hot. And it's only like 78 here, but it's like 110% humidity. So
That's the brutal part. I just got back from Los Angeles last week. And Utah's super dry as a climate. So to go to LA and have that humidity, I was like, it's 102 in Utah. And it's only 80 in California. But like you, I sweat way more. It's brutal.
It feels like 40 degrees hotter. I swear. It's like, I don't know. Not a fan of the heat.
I'm definitely not. And humidity added to the heat is worse.
Yeah.
Because you're from Maine, right?
Yep.
So nice where it's nice and cool and cold most of the year.
Yeah, the spring can be like so darn hot. It can be just like it is here out today, and sometimes, but but it cools off so fast.
Right.
Here 90. Oh, internet connection stumbling.
Yeah, 1 second. All right, you're good now.
Yeah, seems like good. Yeah, so it's like. At home, at least it cools off. You wake up to a cool morning, and you always go to bed to a cool night. So, I don't know.
Yeah, Georgia's an interesting place to be. So
they can keep it,
right? So, for most people who don't know, you do a lot of survival stuff. After you won Alone, from what I watched in all of your YouTube, you seem to have kind of continued on with basically that exact same scenario. You do a lot of like challenges, survival challenges. That's just really amazing to me to think that somebody does that. Like spending 30 days out in the woods on purpose is a very different mentality. That's just really cool that you do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, like coming back from Alone, it was like, what do I do with my $500,000? You know, I was building boats, and I was like, I was never all that happy with it. I went to boat building school and all that stuff because during high school, I was making dresses for girls and skateboard clothes for myself. And I went and looked at fashion school, and I was like, you got to go to fashion school for 4 years just so I could, at the time, wanted to start my own snowboard clothes company. And I'm like, I got to go to fashion school, learn how to make dresses, and hang out with a crowd of people that I'm not interested in spending time with, just so that I could go and build snowboard clothes. I was like, I had to decide either like I'm going to strike out on my own, try to become an apprentice somewhere, or something else. And my dad had bumped into this boat building school at a trade show, and he's like, let's go check it out. And I was like, this seems like the coolest thing you could build out of wood or build at all. You know, wooden boats, traditional wooden boats, you know, the way you steam planks and steam wood. And so I got right into it. But I never, as the years went on, I never really got into it on my own time. You know, I never built one for myself. I never wanted to own one. I liked canoes and kayaks and being outdoors. And I liked that about my work when I got to deliver the boats. But I was always building other stuff for rich people. And my dream has always been, as a kid, I had delusions of grandeur, thinking I was going to invent something and it would be the new thing, you know? And so after I came back from Alone, I had 87 days to think about what I would do with that $500,000 if I won. And surprisingly enough, I actually didn't think about that very often. The money wasn't even an issue when you're out there. And
I've seen that a lot. Like,
yeah.
It seems like a lot of people, and there's people who could potentially have won, that just the money's not an issue, and so they leave, and you're like,
yeah,
okay, it's a very different mentality.
Yeah, it just becomes, because everything becoming your whole life you just almost can't think about the money and what you're going to do with it. It just doesn't matter. Not if you're going to win, at least.
Right.
If you just even trying to hold on to that, it's just not enough to put yourself what you put yourself through with the loneliness, the hunger at times, and all that. It's you got to love what you're doing and just forget about everything else. And this is your whole life. There's no option to quit. There's nothing else to your world except for how am I going to make the next day a better day for your food situation, or as I said, my fishation, because there was nothing else to hunt there. 2 birds, one with my slingshot, and that was the only 2 birds I ever saw the whole time I was there. So
it always seems like game is definitely a struggle for people out on the show.
Until these last 2 seasons.
Right, the guy who got jealous. The moose, and
so jealous, that just so much game and so much opportunities in the new place. The size of those trout they're catching.
Yeah, that's been unbelievable. I've been intensely jealous of that.
Yeah, I got I think maybe I might have 5 or 7 that were above, 1 3/4 pounds kind of thing. Maybe even 3 of them that were 2-pound trout. Okay. But and they're that charred with the pink meat, so they're like salmon. They're so good. But that was it. And none of those porkers that people are always posting pictures of on Instagram, like these rainbow trout that are just monster. Like those are the ones that are out in the middle of the lake, not where I was catching my fish. And these guys are catching 5+ pound, every time lake trout, if not 7 to 8 pounds. I mean, and the ice fishing in that last episode, so jealous. Jealous. But
now you made some adaptations to your location that actually helped you with fishing. You built what I consider to be a pretty ingenious dock that you walked out on. Like, what gave you the idea to do that?
Just something I saw in an old book. Almost everything I learned, was stuff I had learned from just looking at old books that I collected from garage sales and other places. And then I just kind of put my own spin on it here and there. I don't remember how old that book was that I saw, and I just remember something about the Native Americans doing that, making these kind of bridge things all the way across the river and then putting fish traps in them instead of fish nets. And so they go along and they just haul up their fish traps and empty them and stick it back down in. And the fish, when they were running, would be able to get stuck in their fish traps. And so I thought, well, I'm having a hard time. I stink at casting, primitive casting. I've learned how to since.
It's hard.
It's actually not that hard. I was hard because I was trying to coil it in my hand. But as soon as you learn how to make a hobo reel, you can cast up to 40 feet, and you can even nice twitching, reeling in and work a spinner bait even by hand and catch fish.
Okay.
But it's I didn't know how to do any of that, so I was like, I need to get my lines out there. I had a bunch of other lines I was casting out just to the edge of the weeds where the fish would cruise. I had one that dipped on a long cane pole, so it stuck in this sweet spot of broken branches, and the fish always came in there, but I always got it every other time it gets stuck. I have to get another stick and jab it through the fish and then haul it out and break my line. And I always never lost a hook. But so I was like, if I had a dock, I figured at the end of the dock, I could put 3 lines where I could put my snare traps. And so that way, when they did bite, boom, it sets it and I catch a fish.
Right, the spring pole traps.
Yeah. And so I did that, and that one spot produced half of my fish the entire time I was there because of the way I set those. I did lose one off of that because the poles were tangled, and that last, right when I needed it most, and the lines were all tangled. So, but it provided me with, the other reasoning was I had my fancy little Duck Hunter 3000 that was supposed to catch ducks. And after 2 days, I was like, forget this. I'm going to put a fishing line on it and make it into a little fishing boat. And that way I could get that one out further. And I didn't get to keep it out in the water more than maybe 7 or 8 days, but it always caught a fish because being out there, it would get blown back in because of where I was. So for as much time as it was in the water, it did better than any of my other lines because it went past the weeds.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. It's interesting you're talking about having troubles casting. Did you ever consider using your slingshot to cast out?
I thought about that, and I even tried goofing around with that. Didn't work very much. I mean, there are ways I could probably do it, but productive wise, now that I know how to make a hobo reel and cast off of a hobo reel, it's like I'm really good with that now. I mean,
Okay.
like I did one video where we made cordage out of a bottle, and I can cast that up to as long as I can make the cordage, I can cast it. You know.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I just saw a guy I think on Facebook the other day who used a potato gun to cast from the beach because he was beach fishing in like LA. And so he'd load his bait in the potato gun and use it to shoot it out as far as he could.
Yeah, I've seen some guys do that, like ocean casters, and they make slugs out of the bait that are like bullets, and they have these air cannons that they charge up, and then they shoot it like the surf casting rod, like shoot that thing out there like 500 yards, you know. And
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like,
sit there and then boom.
Maybe a slingshot would do that.
But there's probably a way, you know what? And I'm probably missing the ball by not like making something, right?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, sometimes it depends on the materials you have. Maybe some cork or something that would float light you could use as a bobber and use that to launch at.
There's this Nerf gun out there that has a capsule that you stick the Nerf pellet down inside, and the capsule is also inside there is your hook and your worm and stuff, and the capsule on the other end floats. So when it hits the water, it floats, and the little capsule opens up, and your worm and hook fall out. But it doesn't shoot as far even as you can cast a good cast. So it's like, I don't even know if it's Nerf, but it looks just like that.
Same idea.
It's pretty dorky. So.
Hey, that's always fun to play around with stuff and see if it works, right?
Right.
So what made you decide that you wanted to go out on a loan? Like, what about that was an interesting challenge that you felt was worth your time?
Well, at the time, I mean, I lived in a yurt in the woods with my family. It was tiny. You know, I always kind of liked, because I like kind of didn't want to necessarily build boats, and I'd rather be home playing in the woods on my land. It was like I'd work as little as possible, and we'd spend more time like growing our own vegetables and all those things. But spending time investing in that meant I didn't have a lot of extra cash. So, you know, we started watching those TV shows like Naked and Afraid, and then a loan came on, and I was like, 10 items. Like, I don't even use that many items to build like our pig pen and our this and our that around here. You know, I could go out there and that would be just like living. And in a way it was like I built a yurt and I lived in it the whole time I was there. More food would have been nice, but it was just, it's natural. So when I applied, I just said, you know, I know that they want somebody that's unique that they haven't had before. And they're looking for the village people. They're looking for their firemen, their school teacher, they're somebody to fill these certain slots. And I said, I'm a ginger bearded wooden boat builder that in Maine. And they're like,
gets their attention.
Oh, and I said, and I shoot slingshots. And they were like, we'll take you.
Yeah. So. That's really interesting. I loved your yurt. Like, it actually drove me crazy on the Mongolia season that nobody built one, because that is their local indigenous, like that's the Mongolians use yurts.
I know. And they lived in them before they went out there and all that stuff. And like, they didn't give them a lot of tarps. So maybe that was why, but I don't know. I mean, I mean, you could have built your walls the way I did.
Right. Your little, you did double thatched
hurdle waddle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just like the British fencing design, and then double thick and stuffed it with debris.
That would work.
Yeah.
And you've since rebuilt that on your property as part of like you're recreating what you did out there.
Yeah, but as if I did it in Maine. So how I would do it differently, and
that's really cool to watch. I love that playlist, and I've binge watched that a couple of times just because it's fun to watch and it's very entertaining.
Thanks.
And you've got a style of presenting things that's really, really, really fun to watch. So one thing I'm curious about, you were out there, I think I haven't watched all of season 7, so I don't know if anybody's actually beaten your record, or you still hold the record for the longest time.
Not anymore.
Not anymore? Oh, you had it for 6 seasons, man.
I know. Well, okay, so it's apples and oranges. It's not quite. It's not like they went up against me in Patagonia.
Right.
And it's not like I quit either.
No,
so
exactly.
So, I mean, if they had left me there, I could have easily done 100 days. Even at the rate that they were pulling people, I still had enough with my BMI wouldn't have been so low. I would have been pretty darn, I would have been even skinnier, and it would have been pretty tough. But I was on I was on my way to being able to do 100 days, no problem. But yeah, so it's
Yeah,
like they have a lot.
the game structure is different. You're right.
Yeah,
That's
so they're allowed to stay if the last person quits, and that's what happened.
okay.
And then they're also actually they quit. I don't know. I can't remember. I haven't fully watched the last episode because I ended up getting yanked and having to run down here for this show.
Okay.
But they it's like they could stay if the other person was out. I know the last people were out and the last person stayed longer after everybody else was gone, where I wasn't allowed to do
Right.
that. And they got $1 million incentive.
Yeah.
So
a little bit more money to stay out there.
And tons of game. And tons of game. There was,
like you said, too, it's a different game. It was as soon as Carly got medically pulled, you won, game over, you're going home, regardless of how long you could have stayed out. But that being said, you still have the second longest 87 days out there, which is a freaking long time to be out in the middle of Patagonia. Dude, how did you deal with like all of that? I know loneliness is a big part of the game and gets to a lot of people. What did you do to cope with that?
It was just it became my whole life. Like I said before, there wasn't any we have the saying in the boatyard, and it used to be a joke, don't get dirty before 9:30 and nothing new after 2. So I kind of adapted that to my situation. I was like, don't get worried up. Don't get all freaked out about stuff, trying to run around, get things done before 9:30 in the morning. Plan, figure out what you're going to do. Make a cup of fish head soup with whatever I have left and drink some liquids and then plan out what I'm going to do so I can best use my calories for the day, because I always had this huge calorie list of things I wanted to burn my calories on to do that day. So I wanted to be as efficient as possible. I was like, I'll get some grubs and worms, go down, check on my situation, come back, do firewood, smoke the fish that I'm going to eat that evening if I caught one. If not, put another fish in the fish head soup, put that on to simmer, drink another thing of liquid and keep going. And then don't get dirty for 9:30 and nothing new after 2. Nothing new after 2 meant I was like, I'm not allowed to think about quitting. And so no matter what happened, after 2:00 at work in a regular day, most people are kind of starting to think about going home. They're thinking about what they're going to do when they go home. Your mind starts to wander. You're going home to be with your family. You're going home to whatever. And it's better than being at work. No matter how much you love your job, most days you're like ready for hit the door and watching the clock. So I was like, I'm not allowed to watch the clock and I'm not allowed to think about quitting, I said. And so at lunchtime, I would look at that one photo they said we were allowed to take with us. I'd think about my family for 10 minutes, brush my teeth, and that was it. I was like, this is my whole life. I'm not allowed to, and like, because at that time of the day too, as the day gets later, and the whole being out there got later. Days, 60 something going on. Like my food was having a hard time. There was drying up because of a big storm, and I wasn't catching anymore, and they weren't around as much, and so it was like I was living on even less, and it's like your body is burning these calories, and so after like 2:00 each day, you start to feel that lethargy of like as if you woke up from a nap, and you can't shake it. You took a nap at 2:00 and you woke up at 3:30, and you're like, I wish I slept for 2 more hours, but I can't. I'll never go to bed at night, and so you have that weird feeling. You just shake your arms and stuff because your body is literally digesting itself for that energy. And so I would sleep for 12 hours a day and wake up and like be hard at work for 12 hours a day, building my shelter, fixing the situation, trying to get more food, setting more traps. I set over over a trap a week the entire time I was there. And I had all kinds of traps throughout the woods. There just wasn't anything coming around. And I had even seen finally towards the end, the last 3 weeks, I had seen a coyote. And I tried to catch him in this giant pendulum trap with this big log and spikes. And he'd come up to the trap, and we had the deer cameras. And he'd come up to the trap and look around like this. And then he'd run and eat all the fish guts around it, but he wouldn't go in it.
Yeah, and coyotes are wicked smart and really hard to kill.
Yeah. And so at the end, I had built a net, and I was about to go out and set it, and they came and told me it was over. I called it my Wookiee net trap.
There you go.
So it was gonna, like, I thought maybe if he wouldn't go in it, he'd go on it to eat the fish guts, and it would come up around him, and I'd run over because it was just over the hill, and I'd run up and whack him with the axe, and I'd have dinner. But
that would have been really cool to see. And yeah, your whole pendulum trap, I instantly thought the Ewoks. Like that was.
Yeah. I pretty much stole all those traps from Star Wars.
They were effective.
No, I didn't.
Right.
Other stuff, but yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that was really fascinating to me about you out alone. You crafted so many different things. I remember one of your videos you showed like all the spoons you had crafted, and you dug stairs. How many stairs was it to get up to your shelter? Because you had to move, and it was freaking far.
Oh, it was like over 100 steps up and over the hill that I dug into the hill to get over that, and then railings and all kinds of stuff. And so that was a lot of work.
You've converted me to the usefulness of having a camp shovel and like that's not a shovel, because it's one of those things I don't think a lot of people think to include in their kits. I now do, and I watched everything you did with it. I'm like, that's actually one of the most useful things he could have freaking taken out there with him.
You know, I'm watching this last season of Alone, and I couldn't believe nobody brought one.
It's one of those weird things.
I wonder if it's a pride thing, like, you know, like I don't want to do that because Fowler already did it. You know, I don't want to cut. You know, it's like it's so him.
Learn from the show. I would have done it in a heartbeat.
There were so many times they were digging with sticks and plucking rocks out and working at rocks with sticks and things. I'm like, man, a shovel would have been nice for that. But you didn't even need an axe. You don't even have anything big enough to chop with an axe. You guys could have just like whacked at it with the shovel. And there's even the new version of the shovel, which is a little bit longer and a little bigger. Okay. I think I might actually bring that one with me if I go to All-Stars someday.
They're getting close to having the ability to do All-Stars because we're finishing up season 7. There's technically 2 winners in season 3 because they had the couples. So we're actually technically 8 now? 8
winners. Yeah, but I think that the problem might be is like somebody like Alan or one of those guys that are now 10 years older, and they're not going to want to go.
Yeah, Alan's one of those. We had an interesting conversation, me and Josh, about Alan, that he's kind of reclusive, but I'd love to see him go back out and try it again.
He's still busy as far as I know with lots of stuff. So I could be wrong, but I mean, even if
you may have just thrown down the gauntlet right there, Zach.
If even one of them doesn't want to go, then
it creates,
you know, it. I mean, and I guess if they just call it All-Stars and they invite back people that were hurt or pulled,
maybe make a mix of some new people or do kind of a redemption.
They probably wouldn't. I doubt they'd make a mix of new people, but maybe people that they feel like deserve a second chance.
Yeah, Carly's one I felt she got a bum rap on season 5.
Yeah,
she took that fish hook in her thumb like pretty early. I think she was one of the first to leave, and the only person she didn't outlast in Patagonia was you.
Yeah.
And so like I felt back, so I'm like, she had pretty long longevity. She made it 86 days. And yet she got pulled by an accident on season 5 when I thought she might have had a better chance to last a lot longer out there. So maybe somebody like her would come back.
Yeah, third chance.
Yeah.
Third time's the charm.
See if she doesn't.
Got it in her.
She definitely does. I mean, she tried her best. That fish hook was just there wasn't much you could do about that.
Yeah.
But so I'm curious. You're known for doing a lot of slingshot stuff. You do Trick Shot Tuesdays. You've broken several windows in your house, I believe. How worthwhile and how much do you feel a slingshot's an actual like survival tool that could be very useful to people?
They're useless.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, just kidding. So it was useless in my Patagonia. I mean, I got one bird with it, but that was like 20 calories. There wasn't the game there. But before they brought us in, we were in this valley and it was just full of rabbits and birds. Like on the latest season, the slingshot's not the best thing in the cold, and they only let you bring a certain number of ammo. And so if you can only bring, if the grouse were as present as the rabbits, then I would say you could get away with stones and just be plucking, popping all kinds of animals all the time with a slingshot. So I think a slingshot is very useful, just not as useful as if you're only allowed a certain amount of items, unfortunately.
Okay.
So
you ended up using
like
part of your slingshot on the Duck Hunter 3000, didn't you?
I used some of my bands to drive it and make it power it. So I mean, if you're just
still a little useful for you.
No, it's extremely useful if you're just doing stuff. I mean, heck, you can make a tourniquet out of the bands and save your life. If you have a slingshot in your back pocket and you're hiking and you go and fall and, rip open your femoral artery, which I don't know how you would, but you get shot by an archer because you're not wearing orange, but you got your slingshot, you put on a tourniquet, you save your own life. But so same thing with a belt. But I mean, so if you're limited to 10 items, I have to think about it more next time, depending on where we're going. If I will actually, I'll always have my slingshot with me, but if I have to choose, and like last 2 seasons, I would take it a bow.
Well, you were talking, I think, in one of your videos about trying to do a modification between the two, like a sling bow.
Well, they already have them.
Yeah,
but I wanted one that was maybe more convertible.
Yeah, that's what I remember you talking about. Like, it doesn't convert very well without the tools.
Yeah. But at the same time, too, with these lake trout in this last one, if I had brought a sling bow and I was up there
bow fishing,
I could just, if I was allowed to, sling bowing some lake trout like that would have been so awesome. But then again, just having a gill net, I think. So my tools would be a little bit different. I think the only things I would have changed is have the shovel. I'll just bring the newer, bigger shovel that they have. So it's a little bit more like an axe, but it's not so big. And then it's just a teeniest bit bigger, but it would make it a little bit more useful.
A little bit harder whacking, a little more leverage.
A little more digging capable, a little more.
You didn't bring a gill net out with you, right?
No. I wish I had, kind of. Patagonia would have been probably gone really well with the gill net because I could have built my dock out further. And I could have hung the gill net down between it, just like that Native American
Right, when you were
thing.
describing that's how they did it. Like, you probably could have used a gill net out there.
There's so many times people watching the show, and they, like, Sam brought a gill net on Mongolia and then was never able to use it because the water was washing it away. And I'm just sitting there going, like, why don't you build a dock and something you could just have the gill net mounted between two sticks and just jam it down in and lash it off so it was secure. Those fish that were running that everybody was catching, he could have just been like rolling in fish, maybe twice as many as everybody else. That was so hard to watch. Him like starving the whole time for the win in the end. And he won because he's super just tough. But like, I was like,
I love when his wife gets there. He looked at the staff and was like, all right, who has food? I know you do.
Yeah.
That was funny. But yeah, I mean, the slingshot. So one of the interesting things I think about you is you shoot bands rather than, like, most people think slingshots. They think wrist rockets, the tiny little strings that only come to like right here. You can't pull them back.
The tubes,
Yeah, your pullback is freaking far.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people shoot flat bands up to their cheek, just like and stuff. But I shoot a lighter band set with a really big, and I kind of designed that off of a samurai book that I was reading. And
their bow's very
they draw back a ways further, and then the whole thing with them is they with their bow they twist the bow and let it flip out, and then with their backhand they pull back, and so I shoot my slingshot that way. I flip my wrist forward and I put my back arm back and get a lot of power out of it that way. And that's why I have those holes in my windows at home, because learning that method is very, very dangerous. I smacked myself in the cheek once. It just scuffed me coming by, and that sucked. And then a bunch of other times with different frames as I was testing them out, they'd bounce off the frame because you didn't pull it straight back, and it twists and it bounces out the frame and then smashes the window. And so I put metal screens on everything, and there's dings and dents in all my walls. And but I haven't done that in like over 2 years now, so I figured it out.
That's good. I did start experimenting with like the David and Goliath sling, which I think you did a video on yours versus that. Yeah. And there is a hole in the back of my fence right now. So I threw it. It went right through, and I instantly like wrapped it up, stuck it in my pocket. My wife looks up. She goes, "What's that on the fence?" I don't know what you're talking about. Is that like, is there mud, dirt? What? And she goes, "Is that a hole?" I'm like, I really don't know what you're talking. It punched a hole. I was surprised how powerful, even the old world slings, there's some power behind those. So,
right.
and you
The
do.
Romans would make slugs with lead. I mean, those
Right.
are sling those, really.
And I remember, I
Somebody
think it was, who is it? Malcolm Gladwell, I think, he did a TED talk on the David and Goliath story and the validity of slingshots. And it's like in that valley where it happened, the stones there are a specific type that they're super dense. And so, and they were doing all these experiments with them, and basically it was like shooting him with like a 38 slug. Like, you get them whipping, you see little kids do it. That's the most amazing part to me is when you see little shepherd boys working those slings. Because they whip those suckers, and you're just like, how are they that accurate? But
yeah, I never got that much into it. Everybody's like, "Why don't you do that more?" But it's like I always have my slingshot in my pocket. So
right, use the modern technology.
If I see something as a target, like a can laying down a hill somewhere, and I'm fishing, I'll like, or a bobber stuck up in a tree, I try to shoot it off the tree branch and stuff, and it's just like it's just so much fun.
Yeah, they really are. The one thing I had fun with the old school ones is I made a bigger pouch and loaded it with a bunch of small gravel.
Yeah.
To try to turn it into basically a shotgun to see if that could, rather than try to be very dead accurate on a bird in flight, see if you could whip a bunch of rocks and just kind of.
I thought about doing that, of like making a pouch for lead and like going grouse hunting, like a special grouse hunting slingshot.
Multiple bands on it
and really grouse. I haven't tried it.
Huh.
Because you can't legally do any slingshot hunting in Maine. So I only ever get to do like one good hunt every time I go and do a 30-day survival challenge or the wilderness living challenge. Every time I manage to get one thing one time, that's it. I don't know.
But you are a really good shot. I mean, some of your trick shot Tuesdays, you've cut a card in half. You hit stuff where people throw bottles in the air and you hit them. And
we're throwing one of my last videos, which is shooting cereal out of the air.
I haven't seen that yet. I gotta go watch that.
Cheerios up in the air from the sponsor and shooting them out of the air, and I got like 3 in a row at one point. So
wow.
Yeah.
And you've competed in a bunch of slingshot tournaments and like speed shooting and things like that, right?
Yeah. I got my hand carved slingshot, the Sparrow. No, that's not right. It's over there. We're just about to come out in a production model. So like next week, it's getting launched with our new video.
Sweet.
And so I hand carved it, and I got 6th place the first year at the East Coast Slingshot Tournament, and then the next year I got 2nd place, and I beat Nathan Masters out for the shootout for 2nd place. So he took that, and we had it scanned and made an exact replica, and it's now going to be available. It's called the Sparrow.
Sweet. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So the last thing I actually want to touch on, something you kind of referenced earlier, where you're talking about when you're out on a lone, you were starting to feel a little bit drained on energy and feeling a little off because your body's basically digesting itself outside of whatever you can get in fish or sustenance. Since being home, you've done a lot of stuff on ketogenics, the high-fat lifestyle. I think you're pretty adherent to that at this point. Do you feel like that would give you an advantage? Say you were to go out on a lone all-stars. Rather than going through, I think if I remember from one of your interviews, you said like the first couple of weeks was pretty bad for you out on Patagonia because your body was making that transition. And like, I think you said you'd used every pine cone and leaf in the vicinity.
Yeah.
You feel like going out there now, like your body's fat adapted, it's built to run that. Would that give you the energy and the ability to maybe adapt and run a little longer? Because I haven't seen anybody talk about that, but it seems like it would be an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was worse for me in Patagonia because I had bigger issues, and I was already very, for lack of a better word, plugged up from a carb lifestyle, and it doesn't always happen to everybody. Some people like, I have friends they can, people they can eat whatever they want, and they're like,
them.
and they just their metabolism is fast. Ours, mine, it turns any sugar into fat that I could stack onto my body, and so I haven't been the best about it, and thought I was going to do something just before COVID hit. So I let myself kind of get into eating pizza again. And so I gained back a whole bunch of that weight and stuff, but I'm back at doing keto again now. And it's like, I feel so much better when I do it. And yeah, when I go out and I do the 30-day survival challenge and things like that, I don't have to, even if I have been misbehaving beforehand and not being super strict about my diet, it's like I only have the most minimal cleanse. And it's not like before, like, because people that have never done it before, and if you switch over, I think that's why a lot of them never actually get into it. It's because that first like 12 to 14 days can be so miserable as your body cleanses and flushes itself of all the toxins and messed up stuff that's plugging your gallbladder and not allowing you to digest fat and causing you to not get the energy out of your calories that you are intaking. Because I used to be so tired all the time before alone. I was always tired, and I was always just felt dragging and just just felt miserable. Not just a little bit. Like I didn't even realize how bad I felt until after my body was cleansed, and I felt like I was $1,000,000, and I was just like so light and so. It's just a different entirely. And then when I was out there, the further you get into ketosis, and just every single one of these times, my mind is just like, just so it works so much better. It's pretty wild.
How much weight did you lose out there again?
I lost 73 pounds during 87 days. Yeah,
that's a decent.
And every
weight
time
loss.
every time I do a survival challenge, I lose just a couple less pounds than a pound. So during a 7-day thing, I'll lose like 5 pounds to 6 pounds. Like 30-day survival challenge, I'll lose about 25 pounds every time. And it doesn't matter how much I'm eating. Like Texas, we ate a ton, and I lost 25 pounds. Like we were eating tons and tons of raccoons and fat, and it's like more than enough calories for each day. I wasn't lacking for calories until the last couple of days, and I still only lost 25 pounds. And in Canada, we were very short on fat and eating all kinds of big fish and stuff like that, and never went to bed hungry. But maybe one night we went to bed a little bit hungry with like fish head soup, and it wasn't, but it was like, we were, and it lost 25 pounds. So
yeah, it's certainly one of those. Keto will try to slim you up. I know one guy who did have to stop it because he got his body fat too low. He's like a professional bodybuilder, and I think he got it down to 2 or 3% body fat. And he actually had to get off keto for a little bit to boost himself back up because he just could not gain the weight when his body was burning fat. But it's very interesting that, ketogenics is something, it's becoming more and more popular. I think at the time you went alone, it probably, I don't even know if it was really a big thing at the time. I think because season 3 was quite a while ago, and it hasn't become as mainstream as it is now with keto.
Yeah. And no, they didn't. Somebody had suggested to me beforehand, one of the experts, but it was like the first time I had ever heard of it. And now it's like every other post on Facebook is something trying to sell me some keto snack of some sort,
And now it's going to carnivore.
Yeah.
Which pretty much was technically what you were doing, just on fish. So.
Yeah, that's a hard diet though, because even the just you need fats.
Yeah.
You need sugars if you want to gain weight. You need fats if you want to maintain and become fall to your fighting weight and be able to be consistent. And you need proteins just in there as well. But you really, if you're going to survive on just meat, you need like 80% of your calories from fat. Otherwise, you start getting, you're tired from just all the protein.
With the gluconeogenesis.
Your body can only handle.
Yeah.
Your body can only handle just so much. So like this last season, Roland's got himself a big game, and Jordan before had a big moose. Like without the fat from that enough fat from on those animals, it's like your body's only going to handle just so much protein, and you're just going to end up pooping it all out and becoming a little it's not going to be that. Everybody's like, oh, you got a big game, you just lay around and eat it and stuff, but you almost have to lay around and eat it, otherwise you're going to have a hard time, because it's like eating that much protein is like eating Chinese food. Like you eat it and you get some energy, you're like, whoo, sweet.
But you're back and done in an hour.
Yeah, and then like 3 hours later, it's like you're like, oh.
I remember
But
with Jordan, the Wolverine stole his fat. Like he had a bunch, but the
yeah,
Wolverine came in and ate like 40 pounds worth of fat, which is a tremendous amount of calories just gone.
all the wild animals know,
Yeah.
like the wolves and stuff, like when they tear things down and they eat the stomachs out of things.
Right.
They're going in there to eat the fat.
I think even like the Inuits do that. They're prized. I think I was watching Life Below Zero, and they were
Yep.
saying that some of the best prized fat is actually right behind the eyeball. There's some good fat right in there
Mm-hmm.
with deer and caribou, and they'll go for that right when they first kill it. That's what they go for.
Yeah.
And
Well, back in the day, an old book I listened to before all of this talked about the Inuits, like really old Inuits, like living off of seal,
right, seal blubber.
and they would just live off of seal blubber, just like just living off that blubber was literally meant they were getting like 80% of their calories from fat, and they have like still this day they live off lots of fat, and they have the least amount of heart disease of any people in the world.
Right.
It's because
And
of all that fat.
it's interesting because you like to make like fish head soup, things like that. That's been the one part going back and watching some of the other seasons that actually drives me nuts when people get a fish or
Mm.
something like that is they don't make a stew out of it. Because to me, in
I'm
my
not sure if they
mind,
don't, or I'm not sure
at
they
least,
don't, because
yeah.
they don't show everything on the show.
Like when you see somebody, I think it was season 1, they were smoking a salmon, and like
Yeah.
you could see all the fat dripping off it, and I was like, oh, don't do that, don't let that, you need
Okay,
that.
so there are some cases, but even I was toasted my fish first, ate it, and then
Right.
put everything in the thing last. But they weren't really fatty, so nothing was dripping from it. They
Yeah,
were
I mean,
smoking.
trout's different,
They
but
were
like
smoking and they were dry, and then I was putting them on, so I wasn't losing anything, I don't think. But
no.
the salmon, yeah, there
If
was
you
some
see the
juices and fats.
salmon, it's actually funny. I came across a book a while back. It's about a guy crossing the Arabian Desert. He's a British adventurer, Wilfred Thesiger. He's passed away now, but he mentioned it almost in passing that the Arabs don't like grilled meat, or at least the Arabs at the time. Like he wanted to grill up a goat, and they actually got mad at it because they'd rather make a stew out of it where they'd have their purified water because it's boiling. They get all the goodness. I mean, when you're making fish head soup, you're
Hey,
getting
goat. I don't know
calcium.
that you can cook goat on the grill and have it good. I love goat. It's my favorite meat, but it's gonna be so tough.
That was like the complaint. They're like, it doesn't taste good. There's not the flavor we want to. But when it hit me, like when they said that they'd rather any meat that they had be like stewed and in a soup, I was like, why would they do that? And then I'm like, because these people are, like you said, it's like the Inuits. It's like any of these native indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
They do things for a very specific reason, even if they don't know it themselves. So your fish head soup was full of nutrition from the eyeballs, from the brain, from the marrow, what little marrow there is in the bones, and the calcium that
The
would leach
salts,
out,
the
the salts you
electrolytes,
get.
and things that you get out of that you're not getting those any other way when you're out there. I mean, if you have
Unless you know
lots of
where a salt
vegetables,
lick is.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, or you
yeah,
got ocean fish,
exactly.
but
So you'd be able to get a lot of nutrition that way, and that was fascinating to me to start doing that. And I've actually incorporated that more into ketogenics and how I eat. Is trying to find ketogenic soups and stews and things where it incorporates more of that fat back into it as I cook it, over something like a steak where I'm going to lose a bunch of the fat out of it.
back in the olden times, I think they always had like the ever stew going. They just
Yeah,
add stuff to it, and I mean, it used to be a part of every meal too. Like back in the day, it was like there was always like soup and something else, and because those easily liquid nutrients that your body can take in as well as liquids, and we were so much healthier. And now everything's processed, and it's like you got it's just what a difference it makes.
it really does. You're absolutely right. Well, Zach, this has been really fun. I've really enjoyed talking with you, man. Uh, a lot of people don't know, but Zach's been my hero for a long time. I've watched him on YouTube forever, so it's been crazy to actually get the opportunity to interview him. We're just really grateful to have you. I mean, this has been a great conversation. We're going to keep watching what you do, and we really look forward to it. So
Cool. Thanks for having me. And check
not,
out Fowler's Makery and Mischief for the real adventures.
yes, absolutely. Where we can pick you up, you're at fowlersmakerymischief.com. Your YouTube channel is also the same,
Yeah.
and your Facebook, I believe you have as
Yeah,
well.
Facebook and now Facebook and Instagram. I made them all that. They used to be Alone season 3 winner, but now it's just Fowler's Makery and Mischief across the board. So
Awesome.
and
Yeah.
maybe even going with the way of the little kids here. And I started a TikTok the other day.
Oh, I couldn't do it. I spent 5 minutes on TikTok and it was way too addicting. I deleted it off my.
I know, but it's just like, but it gave me so many ideas. There were so many funny things that I
was
do
my problem.
that are short, and I thought like, oh man, I could do a cool little trick shot and do like and then I'm like not committed to like, I don't know,
Stopping and doing it. Yeah, that was my problem. I'm scrolling like, great idea, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. This is not good. That's gonna be a problem. But
there's so many little fun jump cuts that I love doing in the videos, and I thought, like, man, those would play out so well on TikTok, you know.
They really would. It could be a good platform for you to try, so we'll keep an eye out for you.
I thought about that. Like, I got one already. My first one is going to be, and the fish was this big, and the jump cut will be like the fish being like, Broop, it really is this big,
right?
Or something.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for being able to tune in with us today. We really appreciate it. Go check out Zach and his channel. Stay safe, especially in times of the COVID. We really appreciate everybody and all of our family members here at the Family Protection Association, the Survival Life. We will see you all next time.